Like 10:30 something. So why don't we get started? Whoever wants to join us can join in. I'm going to share my screen. Can I share my screen? I can share my screen. And we'll go with, it's going to be obviously super casual and can you guys still see me also?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So, raising a Jewish family, the first thing you have to do is have a family. Right. So that's the first thing. And, it's a mitzvah to have a new child and bring a new child into the world. Whoops, sorry. So there's some things that we don't do in Judaism and we do in Judaism that some people don't do in the secular world. So, our non-Jewish friends will have baby showers, get a nursery ready. Who doesn't want to buy tiny, tiny jammies? It's typically not something that's a very Jewish thing to do. There's something called ayin hara, which is the evil eye. This is not particularly Jewish law, but we typically don't welcome a baby until the baby is here to welcome. So it's just sort of like poo, poo, poo. We don't say anything. The baby will come. You don't tell you're pregnant until after the first trimester. But again, this is kind of just, it's just sort of Jewish tradition. It's not Jewish law. So now you have a baby. We all have to give our babies a secular or English name here in the US and typically a Hebrew name. It could be the same. If your name is Sarah, it's going to be Sarah. If it's Leah, it's going to be Leah. It could have nothing to do at all with the English name. We usually only use those names during weddings and bar mitzvahs, or if you're going to be called to the Torah to have an aliyah. Now, there's a little bit of difference. So Ashkenazi Jews usually name after somebody who's passed away. We also can sort of bend the rules a little bit and name after just the first letter, because some people don't want to name their kid Moishe. They'll just name him Michael. It just, So I actually named the exact name. My mother's name was Bela. And so I named one of my daughters Bela because it's unique. You can usually name boys after boys and girls after girls, but not always. If you run out of kids, like I didn't have any boys, so I had to name my third girl after my father's father. And that's what happened. So no big deal. Sephardic Jews have a little different custom. They usually name after a living relative. So if you have an Ashkenazi Sephardic couple, they really have all the choices in the world. So you have a new baby. You've decided on what kind of name they're going to have, Hebrew and English, but when do they get named? Boys get named at their bris. And that's on the 8th day of life. That's just the ritual time that we have their circumcision. That's what the bris is, unless there's some medical reason that you can't. It's done by a moil. The moil doesn't have to be a doctor. Doesn't have to be. It can be though. It can be. They can be both. I know a lot of like retired surgeons or retired doctors who end up becoming moils. And the baby is held by a sandek. And the godparents, all called the kvader or kvaderin, brings the baby into the room for the ceremony and then brings the baby back out of the room to the mom after the ceremony, who may or may not want to witness that whole thing. Oops.
It is a little weird when you witness your kid. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know I've never gone through that because I have 3 girls, but I know I've been to my fair share of brises, and the mom, I think it's dependent on the mom. Some moms don't go anywhere near the room. Some moms sit right next to it, but sit right next to the baby.
I was in it, but we had a big deal when Daniel was born because at the time they didn't have any kind of naming ceremony whatsoever for girls. And I did not want to do something for a boy that I couldn't also do for a girl.
Right.
I mean, something equivalent.
Right.
And
so the girls' naming ceremony is pretty modern.
It is. It was around for our 3rd kid, I think. Well, we did have our daughter, both of our daughters named in a synagogue, but it was
yes.
like.
And some people don't even tell the name of the child to their friends until the bris or until the naming. And the girls' official naming by, whatever Orthodox, if there is such a thing as an Orthodox girl's naming, they will do it the first Shabbos after the girl's born. The father goes on the bima and does the name. But it can also be a whole thing, just like a circumcision, and can be anytime. It doesn't have to be on the 8th day of life. It doesn't have to be anything. There's really no rules since it's kind of a new thing. So that's kind of nice. You'll see in the Orthodox community, typically little boys have very long hair, and that's a ceremony. It's a tradition that we don't cut the boys' hair until they're 3. It's called an upshurin, and it's kind of like having another, it's just basically another reason to have a party. Not really another reason, but people do generally have another party, but it really signifies the time when the kids are going to officially start reading Torah. They start wearing a yarmulke, they start having tzitzis, and then when they cut the hair, they leave the payas. So these little tiny boys end up, instead of having long hair like girls, they will, you know what, I shouldn't say that anymore. Having long hair, they'll have short hair with payas. And they do something really sweet as they're learning the Hebrew letters. This is what they put honey on each letter. So as they learn the letter, they then lick the honey so that they associate learning Hebrew with something sweet. And that's actually something, if you know Miss Crook, who is a teacher in our Hebrew school, she does the same thing. So in the 2nd and 3rd grade, when the kids graduate from their Hebrew learning book, she has them read a sentence and then take a sip of honey or a lick of honey. So it comes from the same kind of thing. But here you can just see it's a big deal to have your hair cut. In fact, my dad, he was such a cute little boy. His mother used to get approached on the street in Detroit, and people would tell her that her daughter was so beautiful. She said, "Thank you, it's my son." So I'm sure that's a common thing. So the best influence for you, for your family, is really depends on what's important to you in Judaism. So should we just say, you know what, the kid goes to Hebrew school, let the Hebrew school decide how Jewish, what Jewish influences we're going to have on our kids. So if the parents are connected to Judaism, the kids are much more likely to feel connected too. Because what your child sees is really going to be much more powerful than twice a week or once a week or however many times a week Hebrew school. So really what you do is you find something that's Jewish and you make it part of your life, whatever that is. If you're not particularly religious, but you want to mark Havdalah because it marks the separation of the week, you can do that on Sunday night before school starts, Monday morning. You can do Havdalah anytime before Tuesday morning. You can do Shabbat, and maybe it just means having grape juice and challah, which is what kids really love. So being active, being part of it is really the goal, and get the kids involved, right? So we're going to talk a little bit more about this, but being part of a community, it gives people an identity and a belonging. Kids love to be part of something. That's why they love to be on sports teams. They love, whatever classroom they're in, that's their class, whatever they're part of, they really take ownership of. So if they're surrounded by it at home and surrounded by it with their friends, they'll want to continue to be involved. So living in the US makes things a little bit more difficult, rather than living, say, like in Israel, where everything around you is Jewish. So you could live in a Jewish neighborhood, whatever that means. I think, just where there's a more percentage of Jewish people. And when you go to high school and school, the kids, you're not the only one taking off on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. But for those of us living in the Oak Park River Forest area, unlike Charles, unlike your daughter who lives on the northern side of Chicago, where she has a little more Jewish roots up there, we don't. And it's all around us. And even if it's not religious Christianity that's around us, the dominant culture in the US is a secularized Christianity. And you think of it every day and you don't even think of it like we don't have to pay for parking on Sundays. Well, why do we have to pay for parking on Saturdays if it's a weekend thing? You can't buy alcohol at our River Forest Jewel before noon on Sunday. Because I don't know, I can't even imagine what the reasoning is behind that if it's not based in some sort of Christian rule. So Christmas, by the way, is around us everywhere. And so Easter is a little bit less, but Christmas is really more like pop culture. It's in the malls, it's around us. It's not really a religious thing, but it's just everywhere. So to be Jewish living in the US, you really have to make an effort to bring this into your family, because the rest of the secular world, even my non-Christian, non-Jewish friends, adopt a lot of the Christian, like habitual Christian activities, because it's more considered just US. It's something that we do in the US. So what do we do to make this happen at home? Reading. And this is sort of a age-old thing in Judaism. We read. That's who we are. We are people of the book. So you can do storytelling and humor. That's always been central to Judaism. Literacy is a good skill when tangible items could be stripped away. So historically, that's why, when we didn't have a menorah, when we were taken far away from things, when we were removed from our tangible things, storytelling and the ideas of Judaism became really our heritage. So there are Jewish bedtime stories that we can tell that celebrate Jewish values and cultures. There's something called PJ Library, which is run by JUF, and they give free books to everybody up to 12 years old. It says 6 months to 8 years, but then there's PJ and Me, which goes up to 12. It welcomes all Jewish families, whatever the background is, and it's a really nice way to every month get a new, it sometimes will focus around a holiday, sometimes it just focuses on like Jewish ethics or something, but it's a great way to just incorporate your regular bedtime schedule and reading with Jewish traditions. The other things we can do at home, you can have Jewish items in your home so that when your child looks around and when you look around, your house looks different than a non-Jewish house. And having those items make people aware that Judaism is sort of everywhere. So mezuzahs go on the outside of the door, right? And then there's stories about that. Why is it slanted? You know, there were two rabbis. One argued that it should be upright, and one argued that it should be horizontal, and they eventually compromised, so it's slanted. That was a story I used to read to my girls. But the mezuzah doesn't just have to go on the outside door. You can have a cute one that goes on your child's door, and they know that that's their room. There's tzedakah boxes or pushkis. That's what we call it, because that's the Yiddish word for tzedakah box. And it's just there on the windowsill, reminding us that if you find something or you have extra, you can help somebody, and your kids can be part of that process to decide where you donate it. Do you want to donate it to the local animal shelter? And they can bring it there. And it's being active in this role. Celebrating Shabbat is one of my favorites. I mean, I love Shabbat. I always celebrated Shabbat growing up. My parents always had Friday night's dinner with the candles, with the challah, with the wine. My brothers would fight over who got to say the bracha. We would sing Kibanu. It was a whole thing. And we continue that. Actually, I think I go to synagogue on Friday nights more than I did growing up, just because I really love it. And the singing is great. Havdalah is another great thing to celebrate every week. I don't do it all the time. It's lovely though. And again, singing, all of this is singing, and kids love it. Holidays, singing, prayers, you know, children actually may be more open to prayer than adults, just because they're a little bit more open-minded. And sometimes they'll ask questions. You know, my daughters would say, well, why did God flood the earth for Noah instead of just, why did he use actions instead of using his words? Mama, you always say use your words. I mean, I honestly don't have the answers to some of their questions, and it's fine to just say, you know what, I don't know. That's a great question. Let's ask the rabbi. And the kids then know that if they have questions about Judaism, they can come to me, and most of the time I won't have the answer, and then we can go to the rabbi. So I told you I love Shabbat. This is a picture, actually. This little girl here is my youngest, making a challah at the temple with her friend Andy. It does really create a special time in the week for family. We always sit down and have dinner together every night, but on Friday nights, always, if my parents are in town, it's a bigger family get together. It's never takeout. It's always cooked. It's always home cooked. And we make it our own. Sometimes we go to synagogue. The synagogue sessions on Friday night are sort of perfect. They're very kid friendly because there's a lot of participation. It's a very short service. It's usually like 35, 45 minutes. We do candles. We basically unplug. There's no technology. It's just, even just having dinner together makes Shabbat Shabbat. And of course, what child doesn't love challah and grape juice? I mean, it's a great way. Saturday morning, there's lots of things we used to be able to do and we will be able to do going forward. We've been lacking for the past year, but going to synagogue, going to Tat Shabbat, my kids love Tat Shabbat, or junior congregation, which is not as well known, as for sort of the older kids, older than Tat Shabbat, but not quite bar mitzvah age. And it really teaches them prayer skills, and it gets the parents to get together and have a community. I used to love Tat Shabbat, not because I loved Tat Shabbat, but because afterwards there was the lunch, and I would sit with 2 tables of my very good friends, and we would just have lunch, and it was done and ready for us. It was so easy. It was a community event. We used to just love it, and I can't wait to get back to it.
Yeah, you know, junior congregation, I used to take my grandkids to junior congregation, and it was wonderful.
It's wonderful. To be honest with you, I learn about the service.
I did too.
Congregation. And I mean, I'm one of the more regular service goers, but you know, at some point you realize you may have missed something in your education, and there's always something to learn. And Shabbos obviously is great for just kind of resting and hanging out and being with family. Havdalah, I mentioned, I love Havdalah. I don't know why I didn't use one of my own pictures. Actually, what's so funny here is this kid has a Fly Arab Emirates shirt on in a Havdalah shirt. I mean, in a Havdalah session, which is funny. So Havdalah can be celebrated anytime through Saturday night through Tuesday. It's really just the separation between Shabbos or Shabbat and the rest of the week. And it's even more kid-friendly than like a Shabbat service because it's even shorter. And all it is songs, and the songs are really beautiful, and the lights are low and the candles are lit. It's really a nice service, especially when you do it with friends, and it's a community thing. I love it. Jewish holidays. So this is obviously scenes from our synagogue. We know all the big ones, right? Everybody knows about Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, but they tie the family through the year with unique celebrations. And as I've gotten older, my husband always jokes, he's like, why did I have to marry the one person who celebrates like every Jewish holiday? I do. I love celebrating every Jewish holiday, except for the fasting ones. Those I don't love so much. Like Tisha B'Av, I don't love that because that jumps up on you out of nowhere. And so, but let's see, what did I put here? 59% of American Jews keep traditional fast of Yom Kippur, and many others celebrate it in some way. It's a little bit less kid-friendly, right? It's a much more solemn holiday. It's much less interactive, at least in the more religious aspect it is, and it's a time for atonement. And so you're looking at almost 59-60% of Jews keeping the fast and much more celebrating it in some way, going to shul or doing something. Far few celebrate the lesser known holidays, and the lesser known holidays are the better ones, right? They're the much less solemn, much more interactive. Simchas Torah is hands down one. I'm going to say, by the way, I'm going to say each one of these is my favorite holiday. So that's the spoiler alert. So Simchas Torah is so kid friendly. The rabbi and cantor they do not spend their time on the bima, elevated above us, separated. They come down, they dance with the Torah. It's wonderful. Again, tons of singing, tons of dancing. It's really a great, engaging holiday. Purim, of course, is kid geared. I mean, costumes and carnivals and groggers and being able to make noise. And it's a great time for parents too. It's, involves alcohol and not knowing the difference between Haman and Achashverosh and Mordechai. So it's, these are lesser holidays that should be celebrated in some way, and a lot less sort of like traditionally religious, but much more fun and community geared. Sukkot, I pretty much did not celebrate growing up. The temple used to have a sukkah that they would put, Judy and Ed, you'll remember this. The sukkah used to be sort of in the parking lot. Remember that? And now it's on the lawn, which is much more friendly, but it used to be like
between the garage and the air conditioner unit.
Oh, that's before my time. I remember it sort of right alongside where the playground is.
Yeah, that was there too, but I remember it in the back.
Right. I mean, it was like in the back of the temple, and there was one night a week that we have but now we have the sukkah up, and we'll do, if it's nice weather, we'll do Shabbat services in there. We'll do the daily minyan in there. I actually, generated by COVID, I got a gigantic sukkah for my backyard and kept it up long beyond Sukkot just for protection and fun. But we celebrate Sukkot at home now, and it's kind of like a week-long Jewish Thanksgiving. You're outside, you're enjoying harvest vegetables. It's a family effort to build the sukkah. The kids can camp out in there one night with, sleeping. It is a great holiday that I think goes unrecognized or under-recognized, at least. These are great family holidays. Tu B'Shvat, oh my gosh. We as Jews came up with the original Earth Day before it was totally like a political thing in the US to be, tree hugging. We celebrate the birthday of the trees. You can plant a tree, you can go hike in the forest, you can do whatever you want. You can make this and make your kids know that this is a Jewish holiday, that we're going to take a hike at Thatcher Woods. Shavuos, is a great holiday to celebrate with kids, primarily because it involves ice cream for breakfast. And if the kids at some point along the way understand why they're not eating meat on Shavuos, that's even better. But they do know that there's some Jewish holiday where we eat ice cream for breakfast. And they tell their friends this, and their friends are like, I want to be Jewish. I want to get 8 nights of gifts on Hanukkah. I want to have a Jewish Halloween. I want to eat ice cream for breakfast. And all of a sudden, your Jewish kid, who's the only one in their 3rd grade class, now feels, I have something that's really special and it's mine. And that's how things develop. Hanukkah is obvious, right? You cook together, the house smells like Hanukkah. Like you cannot walk into a kitchen and smell latkes and not immediately think of Hanukkah. We make new Chanukias every year, the songs and the games, the gifts, obviously, and just hanging out and introducing their friends. Actually, every year on Hanukkah, I go to I either Zoom, this year I Zoomed, but every year I usually go to the secular school, their day school, public school, and I give a very not religious sort of historical 5-minute, 10-minute thing on Hanukkah. I give each kid their own dreidel and a little sack of pennies, and I teach them, and then the teachers like it because they learn what is half of 4, what is twice of that. So it's a little math, it's a little history. The kids love it. The secular schools have asked me back every year. In fact, this year I did it for the entire 3rd grade, so like 100 kids, and they all got dreidels. It's really, really well received, and even some of the, especially this year on Zoom, some of the Jewish parents emailed me and they're like, there was stuff in there that I didn't even know about Hanukkah. That was a really cool, and the kids loved it, and they love being part of something. So outside the home, there is.
Why didn't you talk about Passover?
I didn't talk about, you know what? I think I was going over the smaller holidays.
Because Passover is, since we got married, Passover is a time where we have family, but we always invite a lot of non-Jewish people.
That's a great point. You can incorporate all your friends and things. I didn't go into like Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Pesach. Those are sort of the big ones that we always think about. I went into the smaller
Passover has been really good in our family because of the variety of people that are there every year. And
you're encouraged to welcome everyone into your house on Pesach. You're supposed to, and the book is, depending on what kind of Haggadah you have, it's in English, and you tell the story, and a lot of it, actually, we always have non-Jewish friends come also, and sometimes the very religious Christian ones really enjoy it because it's a historical, so it's a really, really nice holiday that you can kind of bring people together also. Thanks for mentioning that.
Well, then you have children as well that participate with the 4 questions, the youngest one, and then looking for the Afikomen. So that's how my children, even today, when they're adults, they always remember that, and then they're passing it on to their children. So
absolutely. Charles, I thought you were going to say, even as adults, they still look for the Afikomen, because my brothers always joke, it depends on how much the bounty is. They'll go take off and look for it too. So that is what we can do inside our house, right? That's what we do for our family. But there is, for those of us who have kids that are going to be that are not going to be homeschooled, hopefully for the rest of their lives, they are going to leave the house. So we have options. There's Jewish preschool. I mean, our synagogue has fantastic Jewish preschool, and I say that because I'm involved. There is the option to get Jewish day school, which also offers a great secular education as well, and a religious education. In our area, there's not that many options unless we want to drive a fair distance, but it is an option. Religious school or after school programming is usually what we do at our temple and across the street. Ulpans are something that are specifically Hebrew education. And to modern world, now you can do them on Zoom. You can have apps on your phone that teach your kids Hebrew. There's lots of options there. Summer camp is a big one. There's day camp, there's overnight camp. And as far as the religious side of these Jewish camps, I happen to think that I went to Jewish camp. I went to a Reform, and I went to a conservative, and I went to a secular. It was a right-wing political Jewish camp. We didn't realize what I was going to when I went. But I went to Osrui, which was an overnight camp that was listed with the Reform movement. I went to Ramah, to Israel, which is affiliated with the conservative movement. And I went to Beitar, if anybody knows what Beitar is. It's this right-wing political, I didn't know. I went because they had a 2-week prelude in Italy, and I thought, oh, that sounds fun, and I signed up. So I've had quite the experience with summer experiences, but all of them have given me something. And what it does is it surrounds you with Judaism or some aspect of Judaism 24/7 for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, however long you go for. And there can be options for language immersion. That was part of the reason I went on one of them. It's a really nice option, and you can go all over. This is not just not in Wisconsin. They're everywhere. And there's options to go with these Jewish groups to Israel when you're all done. You can spend a summer in Israel, or you can just go with Birthright. These are options outside the home. There's youth groups that kids can join. There's community events, which can be organized by synagogues. J-Baby and J-Baby Chicago is also something that fosters young Jewish family life. It's funded by JUF. They have classes and picnics and play groups. There is a J-Baby Oak Park, if anybody is interested in learning about that. But when I was living in the city, there's much more in the city and on the north side. And the more Jewish education and community, the more likely people are going to be to stay connected to Judaism. So you have exposure to Jewish holidays and prayer. You get exposure to Jewish ethics, which really is what our Hebrew school focuses on, I think, a lot. Besides the Hebrew, really, what does it mean to be Jewish? How to be a good person. We learn through music and song. We learn a new language, which we all know is fabulous for our brains, besides the fact that it's really great to learn Hebrew, and early relationships with other young members of the Jewish community. These are things that create the roots of making a Jewish family and a Jewish person. And the goal here, when we go back to Jewish ethics, is to raise a good Jew, right? Mm-hmm. When you finally are up to the point where you're getting a child to be bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah ready, it can be anywhere, obviously, between age 12 and 13. They count in a minyan. They feel like they're part of something because they count. They're able to lead prayer. So when you go to junior congregation, the older kids who've had a bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah, they can actually educate the younger ones. And there's a sense of accountability. Actually, the bat mitzvah or bar mitzvah can be Thursday morning alone. It can also be Friday night, or it can be Saturday morning. The bar mitzvah student leads the service, reads from the Torah potentially, and or reads the Havdalah and gives a Devar Torah, their interpretation. And it's really, they have to understand what they're reading. They have to understand and be able to dissect it, sort of the way the rabbis do. And it connects them to their community because they're up on the bima and they're communicating with everybody. Our goal here is to make a good Jew, right? Our goal is to make a mensch. Mensch actually just means person or man in Yiddish, but it really means more. A mensch is a good guy. It's somebody who you want to think of as the best of what you can be. So being your best self, someone who's loyal, someone who's honest, someone who's charitable, all these things, that makes a mensch. There's this idea of a lamed vavnik, and if anybody knows these ideas that Jewish letters actually are numbers also. So lamed and vav comes up with the number 36, so they're called 36ers. But lamed vavnik, it's traditionally thought that anytime there's at least 36 righteous people in the world, and it's somebody who's a real do-goodnik. That's what they're called. They're called lamed vavniks, and they may not know that they're the one. They may know it, but they would never tell you. And so the idea is, maybe it's you. You want to be or aspire to be a lamed vavnik or like a lamed vavnik. And there's stories that are helpful from the Torah and the Talmud that can help parents raise children and raise you to be a good Jew, right? These are the rules that we have, the laws that we have are all there. The mitzvahs that we have, all of them, not just the 10 commandments, all the mitzvahs are there to make us more reputable, to make us a better person. So how can we make little mentions, right? So, this idea, everybody who's had young kids, everybody who goes to the park or goes to any place where there's other parents say, oh, my Jimmy is special. My Jimmy is the best at math. Oh, well, my Connor is the best at chess. Oh, and so-and-so's my little Leah, she's a great field hockey player, the best in the state, and everybody's the best. And you want them to have academic perfection. You want them to be musicians. You want them to be great at sports, because the kids typically are thought of as sort of the product of you. So however they perform is a reflection upon you. But according to Jewish law or Jewish thought, your child isn't really yours. Your child is really on loan. And our goal as parents is really to help them find their path. So there's a Hasidic teaching that says if your child has a talent to be a baker, don't ask him to be a doctor, right? Let them find their path. I mean, you wouldn't expect, if you go to a pediatrician for your kid or a cardiologist for yourself, you don't expect them to be a great ice hockey player, nor do you care if they are. You want them to be good at what they're good at. The children are made in this image that are perfect. So let them do it. I put the word smokefish in here because there's a funny story. There's these two women, one they've known each other for years. How are you? How's your son, Jacob? Jacob, Well, initially he became chief resident, and then he got a cardiology fellowship, and now he's the head of cardiology, interventional now he's the chairman of cardiology, and then they made him the chief of the medical office. He's now the entire part of the AMA. He's the president. He's the best. What is your son doing? Oh, Leo, he drives a smoke fish truck. That's it. He drives a smoke fish truck. There was nothing, you do what you do. And if you're happy and it makes you happy what you do, the kids should do what they want. Mm-hmm. So now what? We've all heard this, but mom, or in my case, mama, there's this idea in Judaism, the law to honor your mother and father. It's one of our commandments. Its inclusion as the fifth commandment. Evidence, rude children are not a modern concept. They've dated back to the 10 commandments. This is not a 21st or 20th century concept. A lot of parents raise their kids, especially now, as a contemporary. Your children's friends. You don't want to be seen as an authority figure because that feels very stodgy and old and undemocratic, and it should be a discussion. It shouldn't be a rule. The problem is that the real source of the real answer of how you should be raising these kids is probably somewhere in between rigid and being their friend. It's much easier to accept guidance from someone if you respect the source. So if you don't teach your kids respect, you're going to have a hard time teaching them anything else. The Torah had a great way of teaching us this. So you honor your mother and father, you learn by example. So if you treat your parents well, your kids will treat you well. In Judaism, God is actually more interested, I really love this, in how we treat others than proclamation of our faith. So in the Talmud, it said, better that my people should forsake me, but observe my laws, than believe in me, but not observe my laws. So it's really in the doing. It's not so much how much you pray, how much you believe in God. It's taking those rules of ethics, because Judaism is really about being a good person, right? That's why we have all these 613 mitzvot, these good deeds we're supposed to do. If you're a good person, that's the most Jewish thing you can do. That's the menschiest thing you can do and the best way you can live your life. Grandparents and family, it's hard sometimes, especially if we don't live anywhere near them. And we have busy lives and we're working. But if you prove to your kids that you value time with your own parents and families, not just as sort of a pinch hit babysitter, they will realize that family is valuable. And that's why Friday nights and Shabbats, and if you can make that happen, it's ways to make your kids participate in family life. What about kids who say, I need it? Again, we're trying to create little mensches. This is how you make a Jewish family. So is it bad to long for things? Is it un-Jewish to want? Do we need another stuffed animal? Do we need another Lego set? The Talmud talks about Yetzer Hara. Remember we talked about Ayin Hara, which was the evil eye. The Yetzer Hara is the evil impulse, or the impulse for bad. And the Yetzer HaTov, which is impulse for good. The thing is, neither one of them are bad. They're both needed. You need to have both to sort of balance each other out. So wanting things and having this Yetzer Hara, it's okay. You can't eliminate it. You just have to know how to control it. And that's, again, something that we just have to teach. It's a balancing act, right? We have to exercise self-restraint for our strong passions. Doing the right thing is more important than feeling the right way, meaning it's okay to want it as long as you do the right thing. We can desire things, but we have to be able to sort of direct ourselves to the right path. And it puts limits on whining and begging, but we can't criticize the desire because that's normal. And when you say no, the comments that follow may not be the most flattering, and that may be coming from Yetzer Hara, and that's okay. The goal is just to be the best parents we can be, the menschiest parents, and to raise the best kids. Giving, this is a big part of raising a Jewish family. Everybody is obligated to give charity. We're taught that the more we have more than we need. Even the poor are obligated to find somebody in greater need, and a lot of these Jewish bedtime stories will focus on that. Somebody who has what seems to be nothing will give to somebody who has even less. And in Judaism, we have this idea of tikkun olam, which is making the world a better place, and that's what children do. Children appreciate from good deeds done. They're going to want to perpetuate giving. There's ways that you can include them. I know in our synagogue, Carol Flank runs for the Feeding the Hungry. It's Housing Forward. We make sandwiches every month. And so my kids have not only learned about charity, about people who are less fortunate, they also learned about an assembly line. So there's ways to teach your kids about everything. You can teach them secular ideas and you can teach them ethical ideas, and you can roll it all into one. And it becomes this activity that they love to do. They want to be part of it. Temples have mitzvah days. We just had one at our temple where we were giving away, donating old electronics to sort of upcycle. And there's other things that we can do. If anybody's at all interested in other projects, I would be happy to help you with those. And we at a temple have a social action committee. So within our congregational family, we prepare and deliver meals. We provide transportation to medical appointments and airport in times of need. For the extended Jewish community, the Tzedakah projects for Jewish group in the Chicago area, there's letter writing campaigns, there's donations of medical supplies, there's all kinds of things we can do. And then there's for the community at large. Our temple has blood drives from in Gottlieb Hall. We do things with pads with the homeless shelter, and we do events with the community of congregations projects in Oak Park and River Forest, both Oak Park Temple, and we provide things for homeless, and even for the Austin School District. I think we are currently collecting plastic bags at the front to make plastic benches in different parts of the town that may not have things that they would like to get. Then maybe people don't donate there as much. So we're all part of a bigger community, and the kids see that. They know they can put the bags in the recycle bin. They know what it's for. They know that our temple, the Jewish temple, is doing this to be part of something. What about what we eat? Oh, have another piece of brisket. So as a hungry Jew, there's lots of things to consider. How much do we eat? What do I eat? When do I eat? How do I eat? We have blessings before and after we eat. A lot of us don't do those unless it happens to be that we're eating, unless Ed is leading us after Shabbat lunch in Gottlieb Hall. But it does sort of force us to slow down. If we do that, and for those of us who've gone to Jewish day camp and overnight camp, we definitely do the birkat. We definitely say blessings before and after we eat. And as you just sit for a second, be thankful for what's going on, be thankful for who's around us, then we eat. Whether or not you choose to mix milk and meat, whether or not you choose to have a shrimp cocktail or choose to have pepperoni on your pizza, if you know the rules and you choose not to abide by them, that's fine. The idea that I always had was that, and I was taught this a long time ago, is that making that choice, even if it's the choice to eat it, making that choice turns having a slice of pizza into from something ordinary into something more than ordinary, because you've made a decision about something that is more. And if you teach your children why we don't eat milk and meat together, we're honoring the life of the animal, we're honoring the death of the animal, even if they choose to eat it together, somewhere they're thinking about it, and it has elevated that very ordinary experience of having a slice of pepperoni pizza to something more, even if they choose to eat it. So it's kind of interesting. And we lead by example. We're coming to a close here, but the probability so I'm a pulmonologist, so I wanted to include this. The probability of a child smoking doubles if one parent smokes and quadruples if both parents smoke. So this is just sort of more evidence that we do have such a strong influence on what our kids feel, do, think. Young adults who eat a low-fat diet is 5 times more likely if one parent had a low-fat diet. Associations exist for alcohol consumption, wearing seatbelts, doing exercise. Basically, your kids see you. They see us, they see the community, they want to be part of whatever is around them. So if we can create this nurturing lifestyle that is Jewish in a fun way, and showing them that Judaism is really about being part of something, and being part of something to make you a better person and to make the world a better place, they're going to want to be part of that. So being Jewish together means we should all be mensches. And I think that's it. How do I stop share? Hold on.
Down at the bottom.
There we go. So am I off sharing now? Okay. So a little bit shorter than your usual lecture. I think David says you usually go a little bit longer, but you guys all know already how to raise Jewish families, or at least you're familiar with it. This was my take. I'm happy to answer questions, or we can just have like a discussion if you're interested. Talking about your own experiences, or Anybody have anything to offer?
So I think bar and bat mitzvah is almost cruel.
I-
You
I mean,
do.
oh gosh, to have the poor kids at the age of 13 to get up and speak in a language that they don't know and give lectures to all their whole family. I mean, even if their family wasn't there, it would be less.
I think the kids really feel a sense of accomplishment after doing it. And I also think that the rabbis, when they decided on doing it at 13, were very smart, because once the kids get to be 14 or 15,
You
they
can't
would
tell 'em.
couldn't get them to do
You
it.
couldn't tell them to do it a little bit older. That is absolutely the case.
Yeah, I tend to think that, I mean, it depends on the kid and how comfortable they are speaking in public and getting up in front of people. I don't think it's punitive. I think it's really, I think they,
Oh, I wasn't saying it was punitive. It's just so much to ask for a kid.
well, I have to
Okay.
tell you, have you been to bar and bat mitzvahs at other synagogues? They don't ask nearly as much of them as we
Oh,
do.
yeah.
Well, actually,
Yeah, not too many.
I think
Right.
ours is, I mean, well, you can't ask much more than we do. I mean, they do all, if they can, they do all the aliyahs, which is the hardest thing because you're reading actually from the Torah, right? You do the Haftorah, you do a maftir if there is one. You lead whatever other prayers that you know, you give the Devar. I mean, there's not much more to do. I mean, unless you're going to take the cantor's job, which I'm fairly certain my daughter will want to do. There's not much more. Most of these kids, I mean, you can get away with doing a bar mitzvah just giving a Devar. You could just
Yeah.
read the first aliyah. I mean, you don't have to do the whole thing. I think what we do is we size up, and I remember Cantor Brindell, our former cantor, was really good at this. You size up the kid, however much they're capable of doing, you ask that of them and maybe push them a little more so that they do have that sense of pride. And I think when they're up there, even though it's totally frightening, they do this in high school too. You have to have these classes in how to do public speaking and how to be on whatever, even if you're not going to be on the debate team. This is something that is a life skill. And so I think it's really valuable. And I think the majority of kids really are proud. And
they're very proud.
it is a wonderful experience. And like I said, I don't think we ask more than they can do. If they can't do as much as, you know, the typical, they do what they can. I mean, I know someone who read a Haftorah entirely transliterated. If it's done, it's done, but you do what you can and you're proud of it. I think it's great.
Julia would not have had a bat mitzvah if it hadn't been for Charles. Charles took the bus to our house in Elmhurst.
Oh my God.
He did. He really did. I mean, he was young then.
He was young then, and
Cantor Brindell was old.
Julia has, is dyslexic and was having a hard time learning. And
Cantor Brindell was not up to it.
Was not up to it. So he let Charles teach her.
Yeah.
Well, see, Charles is a mensch. See,
Yeah.
Oh gosh, Charles is
is.
a mensch. Yeah,
Charles
absolutely.
I mean, that's what you mean, right? You know, that's what we mean
Yes.
when we talk about somebody who's just like this great guy. So, you know, thanks for sharing. That's interesting. Anybody else have anything they want to sort of contribute or talk about?
Well, I think another thing, and unfortunately it didn't happen, but
Yeah.
they have these post-bar mitzvah year trips to Israel that Joshua was supposed to go on last year, and it got canceled because of COVID.
He was so disappointed.
He was so disappointed.
Oh, I'm sure.
But really looking forward to it.
Right, so disappointed. If he had, the trip before his actually went.
Because they went right before.
And he didn't go on that because there was something here he wanted
Oh, he
to.
wanted to be around for his birthday.
He wanted to be around for his birthday. Right, that's right.
Because it was in February and his birthday.
So the trip before his went, and his got canceled. He was real upset.
Well, he can always do Birthright. Birthright is available, I think, through age 21 or 24.
There's something he's looking into.
Yeah.
And the neat thing was, it was his idea. He found out about it and then he said he wanted to go. So we were.
That's awesome.
Right.
We're real happy about that. He's a born actor.
Mhm.
He likes to show off. He
Yeah.
really loved.
He likes getting up in front of a
He
crowd.
loved.
So he loved his bar mitzvah.
He did a good job, didn't he? He has a pretty voice. His voice has changed and it's still pretty, which is nice.
Mm.
But he's taller than I am, and which is an accomplishment. I'm not short.
He's
And-
tall. He's the tallest. He's taller than his older brother now.
Oh yeah, well, he's short. My family is tall, his family is short, our kids are all short. It just never occurred to me that I'd be the parent if somebody was 5 foot.
And Raina is teeny. Raina's going
Raina's-
to be 21 in a week and a half.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah,
Great,
Yeah,
you've raised a nice Jewish family.
she did.
Mhm.
And Raina, I was really impressed that when Raina went to college, I went with Julia, and Raina and I went when she was a freshman. We drove over and spent the first couple days with her. And one of the things she wanted to do was go to the Hillel,
Oh, nice.
the Hillel meeting. And I went with her to the Hillel meeting, and they had, pre-COVID, they had Friday evening meals once a month. And she used to go.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even get into college during this talk, because I figure once you go to college, you're sort of flown the coop.
Yeah, well, I was real
Right.
impressed that this was something, she's going to college.
So,
she's going to
As
things
just a
to do.
segue from that, I was talking to David Schwartz about, so just interestingly, which I think is a success story, especially after a year like last, all of our Hebrew school graduates have decided to go to Hebrew high school. Part of that, I think, is just this sense of community, and we have a fantastic Hebrew high school teacher.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's.
I know,
why.
Stopek is pretty great. But
Yeah.
what David was telling me is that for all of our graduating seniors who are going to be going off to college, he connects them with the person in charge of Hillel at their university, which, as we know, college campuses tend to be sort of a hotbed of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. It can be really, really threatening, especially if you're a brand new freshman in a new place and you may or may not have the sort of historical context to answer the stuff intelligently. If they throw sort of, facts at you or buzzwords at you and you don't know how to respond, I think the fact that we connect them, that David and our temple, our Hebrew school, sort of supports the kids and says, I know we're not going to be there with you, but here's the Hillel. If you have any trouble, or if you have any questions, or if you need anything, here's the person in charge of your Hillel. So that's the one less thing they have to look for when they get there. Or even sometimes you don't even know to look for it. If so the fact that he, gives this to all the incoming college freshmen, I think is it's a nice tool for them to have and a nice backup. So I don't know why I brought that up, but it is quite nice. All right. Well, anybody have anything else? This was sort of.
I was just going to say that even though my children, once they got beyond bar and bat mitzvah, they distanced themselves from any more formal study or training. When they were youngsters, the types of activities that you mentioned, that they were still, even today as adults, more or less contemporaries as yourself, they strongly identify themselves as Jews in practice. I would say even more intensely than maybe the examples that my wife and I provided for them when they were growing up. But that made all the difference. Just those activities we were able to develop in that island in Costa Rica, where they were really immersed in a different type of a culture with a lower percentage of Jews, and they strongly identify with it, and they have Jewish homes, all 4 of them today. So
that just proves that you did a great job at home. I mean, when it's not around you,
it was my wife, not me.
Well,
he was the one that made sure there was Shabbos dinner. Yeah.
I mean, things like that make a difference. I mean, it's funny. I grew up in River Forest, actually, and I went back and looked at my first grade photo, the class photo that they used to send out. And about a third of this is shocking even to me, a third of my class in River Forest was Jewish. Some went to Oak Park Temple, some went to, our temple. But 7 out of 21 in my first grade class. My daughter has 0 in her 3rd grade class, just her. So I think the fact that there are so few Jews in the area, at least in River Forest, I think there's more in Oak Park, but in River Forest, there's so few. Maybe, I think in all of Willard, which is the elementary school we go to, which is K through 4, I'm going to guess less than 15 Jewish kids.
Well, when our kids were in school, we once talked to the school psychologist, and he's like, we asked him how many Jews were in the school, and at the time we had 2 kids in the school.
Yeah, but I think sometimes that makes you feel, if you don't make a big deal out of it, you just sort of don't even notice. But if you know that you're sort of special, like you're one of very few, and your family makes it oh, well, we have Earth Day, and we have Shabbat, and we have Hanukkah, and we have Purim, they almost feel like they have something like special, something that the other kids don't have. So it's all, and I grew up here too. And as I got older, there were less and less Jews, or fewer and fewer Jews. And I did really feel like there was something that I had that other people didn't have. And I praise my parents for giving me that. And that's why it stuck. The kids who went to Hebrew school with me, same Hebrew school, same teachers, same opportunities, whose families were like, yeah, whatever, we're Jewish. They are, you know, friends with me on Facebook and have zero connection to anything. And they're in Chicagoland. They just don't feel it. So that sense of belonging, that feeling really comes from home. So anyway, I think we're all doing a good job. I think we're all doing our best job, which is all that we can ask. And we'll just try to make mentions going forward.
Yeah, it was very, very nice. I really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you.
Yes, you
Thanks.
filled in some, always give a little bit more structure.
Right.
You ask, people ask me, why do I attend these classes? Because there's always something more to learn, and there's a little more subtlety that that's added to whatever meager understanding I have. So.
Right, good. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Say hi to Holly for me. Say hi to
will.
Dan for me also, Ed and Judy. He was my contemporary. And Susan, I don't have anyone to say hi to at your place. But hi to you. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of this gorgeous day. I'm gonna go take my kiddos to soccer. It's not
Yeah,
Jewish soccer, it's just soccer.
Yeah, we're having lunch outside for the first time. Our air conditioner was broken all last week, and
Oh, what a week to have it break.
and having it so hot in the house, we just didn't have the energy to eat outside in the hot.
Right.
So,
Well, enjoy the day. I'll see you guys all soon, I hope in person maybe.
Okay.
that would be nice.
Right.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye.
Have a good day.
You too.
All right.